I would like to make a motion to reduce the total budget by $265,000.
Mr. Gary, your motion is to the bottom line number?
That's correct.
Is there a second?
Second
Ms.
for
Gorman.
discussion.
Discussion, Mr. Geary.
I just, while we...
Actually, may I pause you for just a moment, or perhaps we could tabulate in the meantime what that would bring the number to? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
The reason why I stated that amount was for the sprinkler system at the Sandown North, especially after finding out that the Danville school didn't have one. And I'm not really familiar with how the warrant articles work, but I think we're in a position to create a budget for education. And I'm seeing the sprinkler system just as asset protection, which I think the taxpayer should have a say whether they want to spend the money or not.
And Mr. Geary, just to be clear on your motion, you're proposing cutting $265,000 from the bottom line, speaking about the money that's in draft number 3, but you have not moved to specifically take that $265,000 out of the Sandown North sprinkler system line.
Well, allow me to rephrase
Okay.
and tie it to the $265,000 tied to the Sandown North sprinkler system.
Does anyone have a problem with that proposed amendment? Ms. Gorman, your second stance?
Yes, it does.
Any further discussion on that motion? Mr. Greensall.
Like the playground, this wasn't part of the original facilities project list that was deliberated by Facilities Committee. It wasn't part of the future band years, so it's not required by code, and it doesn't provide a saving in insurance, and it is primarily asset protection. I'm not saying that it's a bad idea. I don't agree that it is an emergency or that it is a priority that must push its way onto the budget ahead of other things. And as I said before about the playground, I think that as part of a deliberation on consolidating North and Central and Sandown, if it's decided that ought to be part of the consolidation, that ought to be proposed next year. That would be a priority for this year.
Mr. Stokinger, do you have a figure that if that amendment is approved, it would bring the bottom line down to what number?
I get $67,723,927.27.
Any other discussion on that amendment by Mr. Geary? Ms. Gorman?
This is just why I would support this motion, and it just goes back to the math program. We have it in this year's budget. We have it in next year's budget already. The money's there. We only need to spend it once, but we have it in there twice. So if we don't get it this year, we're just shy, or you were being, conservative with the amount for the sprinkler system. So the money is there either this year or next year if we put the unused math program funds towards that. So that is why I would support this motion. I feel the money's already in the budget, one way or another.
Anyone else?
Could I just, I would just ask, if this money is taken out, just as with the playground, does this mean that there is no sprinkler system in Sandown North?
No, 2 points. One, there still could potentially be one, and to Kathy's point, if it's in, it would come out of surplus. So we're paying for it one way or the other, right? Which is, again, I get into that whole thing about budget and tax rate, right? So, I think I've made my position very clear. I think that school needs a sprinkler system. I believe Danville needs one as well. Whether the 4th and 5th grade end up at Sandown North or not, I think they deserve and need additional playground space, whether or not. So, to your point, yeah, this still could happen, even though no matter how this is voted on. But if it comes out via a cut, and it is done, just to be clear to everybody that's watching, everybody that's listening, it comes out of surplus, which increases tax rate. That's the reality. Thank you.
But if we approve spending the money next year, then that same spending impacts the tax rate a year after the fact.
We have to pay for it at some point.
Right, so, but I mean, we're in a position that we're impacting the tax rate, whether we spend it out of surplus this year or whether we spend it as a
Within the budget.
line item within the budget next year. That doesn't impact the amount of money that the community pays. They're spending that $265,000 one way or the other. Okay. Just to echo my point on the playground, again, this is a difficult expense to justify with so many balls up in the air. I would note that no matter what, well, not no matter what, but should this committee subtract this line item, that does not mean, as Dr. Metzler stated, that this subject is dead. The school district could elect to spend it out of this year's budget as surplus. At the same time, whether it's a school board, a citizen's petition, or someone else, if this is an important, needed expense with more information known later than what is clear to us right now, then someone could put that as a warrant article to spend, whether it's $265,000 as a loose overestimate right now, or 2 months down the road with an actual estimate with real dollar figures, or whether it's putting Sandown North and Danville together on one warrant article. That could all happen, and leave that to the voters to decide. So I think that there are options, certainly to do this, no matter what this committee decides. But with the information that we have at hand right now and the number of fuzzy variables that are out there, I cannot support spending $265,000 for it at this point. Mr. Blair?
It should be noted, if it does end up in a warrant article as opposed to just a simple budget cutoff of a line item and it fails, then we cannot spend the money to do that, period. Because the voters have told us explicitly not to. As a line item, we can choose whether we spend it or not. So there is a clear distinction if it gets voted down as a warrant article versus just a removal as a line item.
Any further discussion on the proposed amendment by Mr. Gary? Mr. Horns?
I would just say that I would encourage, if that is the case, I would rather it come out of the surplus this year than come out of the budget next year. That's just my opinion.
Any other discussion? Madam Clerk, would you please read the amendment that's on the floor?
Mr. Geary, motion to reduce the budget by $265,000 for the Sandown North sprinkler system, seconded by Kathy Gorman.
All in favor of the proposed amendment, please raise your hand. Mr. Cantone.
Sorry.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Madam Clerk, that cut passes, or that amendment passes by 6-4 vote, is that correct? So, someone will correct me if I am mistaken, with that cut made, the number that we're working at right now is $67,723,927.27. Is that correct?